During World War II, the United States Airborne would be the premier fighting force that would pave the way for defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. They would undertake the most daring missions in the most adverse conditions. From Normandy to New Guinea, and from the Rhine to Corregidor, they were at the forefront of America's toughest days. Under the canopy of Chutes, only armed with weapons, a jump uniform, and a lot of guts, the story of the American Airborne is most famously known for their part in the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. One particular group, known as Easy Company, would send the pages of history blazing with notoriety. The invasion of Normandy, better known as D-Day, would consist of over 150,000 Allied soldiers, sailors, and airmen crossing the English Channel to take on Hitler's fortress Europe, and eventually be the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Officially trained at Toccoa, Georgia, the original 140 men of Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne, would have one of the most embellished records of any U.S. Army combat unit in World War II. They would fight at Normandy, Holland, Belgium, Germany, and Austria from 1944 to 1945. Their story was documented in the HBO series Band of Brothers and was an inspiration to upcoming historians, collectors, and reenactors. If one wants to find a physical reminder of their time in World War II, where do you look? We are in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, seated in the heart of one of the most important battle sites of the American Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg. The land all around us, drenched with history, is the key. This is where we will find our museum. Located in the middle of town sits a museum that sees thousands of visitors every year. Draped in American decor stands a building that's been here since before the battle. The Gettysburg Museum of History is home to thousands of artifacts from nearly every major moment in American history. Curator Erik Dorr has made this historic building into the museum that houses one of the most comprehensive airborne collections in private hands. The amount of military history is astounding, and every corner you turn is an artifact that just blows me away. The smell of antiquity here is nostalgic. It's the perfume of history, or just possibly dust. You are looking at the largest collection of artifacts from Easy Company in the world. This is where you can truly learn about Easy Company's story in the best way possible, seeing the physical reminders in front of you. One of the great heroes of this outfit was Richard Dick Winters. Okay, Eric, so who is Dick Winters and why is he so important to the story of Easy Company on D-Day?
Well, Dick Winters was an officer in the 101st Airborne, and he was the commander of Easy Company for a period of time. He was also the battalion commander of 2nd Battalion later on in the war, who Easy Company fell under. He started out actually as a platoon leader, but he was a great leader. He was very well respected by his men, and later on, he became the focal point of the book and the series Band of Brothers.
At the time, Lieutenant Winters was thrusted into a major combat leadership role, a scene so frequent in the early hours of D-Day. His story would make him famous.
And there were some artillery guns, German artillery guns, nearby, and they were assigned the task of taking out those guns. There were 4 German 105 cannons firing at the men now arriving on Utah Beach. And that was at a place called Breakcourt Manor, which is where the guns were. So he assembled what men he had, which I believe was 12 men from Easy Company, and they went and attacked those guns. And I happen to have the actual Distinguished Service Cross right here. Wow. That Dick Winters was awarded for that action.
That's absolutely amazing. And this is the actual one he was awarded for D-Day.
Yeah, there was a ceremony in a few weeks later with several of the commanders, including General Bradley. And yeah, this is the one, according to his notes, that he was actually handed that day.
Erik also has a variety of Dick Winters' objects, such as his dog tags, maps of Normandy, and many photos from his archives. One object in particular blazed its way into history.
So what do we have here, Erik? This is a fantastic piece of history. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering the story. What's the story behind this?
So this is Dick Winters' 1911 .45 pistol, and if you know the story of Band of Brothers, Winters lost his equipment. When he jumped out of the plane, there was so much shock from the plane going too fast that it ripped his leg bag off, and all his equipment was gone. So he basically just had a jump knife. Now the story I had that's documented in the files we have is that he had two .45s, and he took one with him on D-Day, and that one was the one that he lost. This is one that he had all through training. This one's a little bit older. This is a real early version of a 1911. So he carried this throughout the rest of the war, and you know, the only time he really didn't have this was at D-Day, and as you can see, it's very well worn. You know, he kept this in a holster even after the war.
This is real history, ladies and gentlemen. This is the real thing. This was actually on Dick Winters' person during his time in World War II. This is one of the finest firearms to serve in the Second World War with the United States military.
Winters, as he parachuted into Normandy, wore a specially designed uniform for paratroopers. It was known as the M42 Jump Jacket.
Tell me about this uniform right here.
Well, that's Dick Winters' M42 jacket that he wore on D-Day. It's modified, you know, it has an extra pocket on the sleeve. It also has the reinforcements. It's hard to see, but they're there. And it has his name stenciled here.
Wow.
So some of the guys in the 506, especially Easy Company guys, you know, use the pockets on the sleeve. Forrest Guth on his jump jacket even had pockets on the back. You know, he had them all the way around. So they would get other uniforms, pull the pockets off, and sew them on there.
So these were excess pockets. These weren't typically issued.
No, that's a modification. You know, a lot of those modifications were done by parachute riggers, who were guys that would sew for them, and you know, they're really for the parachutes, but they would do all kinds of other modifications, be it on the uniform, or even like with jump knives and things like that. You know, airborne warfare was a new thing, and you know, it was kind of like almost like a big experiment. They kind of, you know, developed things as they went. You know, even things like the signal cricket. You know, that was something that they came up with last minute.
While not in combat, Dick Winters, like many American servicemen in World War II, wore something a little bit more formal.
Wow, Erik, what do we have here? Tell us all about this.
Okay, well, this is one of my all-time favorite pieces right here. This is Dick Winters' Class A uniform. And he had a very famous photo, actually two photos, taken when he came home in December of 1945. He went to a local photography studio in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where his parents lived and where he was living when he got out of the Army. And he had this photo taken, and he also had another black and white version taken in this very uniform. Every uniform in World War II, especially the Class A uniform, tells a story. It has his awards in it, it has his decorations, it has his unit history on there, and you can really tell a lot. If you're a collector and you know this stuff, you can tell a lot about what this man did just by looking at what's on this uniform. So just real quick, I'll go through a couple of the items on here.
Absolutely.
This oak leaf here is his rank insignia. That signifies that he was a major, which was the rank he was when he left the Army and when he got home. And what we have here is the 506 Distinctive Unit Insignia, or DUI as collectors call it. And the green loop is a leadership insignia. So they have the U.S. collar brass, which is what officers would wear, and enlisted men would have a circular one called a collar disc. And then you have the crossed rifles, which means infantry. He was an airborne infantry officer, and 506. That was his regiment, 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment. Then you have the combat infantryman's badge, which is really unusual because they're usually bigger.
Yeah, they're about this big, right?
Yeah, and so he chose to wear a smaller one. You can see it in the photo. It's the same one, and maybe just because it looked a little sharper, you know, with all those awards. And of course, he has the Distinguished Service Cross.
This one right here,
yep,
the first one?
And then the Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and this is the award for being in the Army before World War II. You know, he was actually in the Army when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And that's his World War II uniform. And I mean,
wow,
it's just it's a great piece because it says so much about him and his awards and everything.
That's some really fantastic history, Eric, going over each and every piece of this uniform. There's history at every corner you turn.
One of the more tragic stories of D-Day was that of Lieutenant Thomas Meehan. Lieutenant Meehan was Dick Winters' commanding officer just before the jump.
So, Eric, how does Dick Winters take command of Easy Company on D-Day?
Dick Winters took command of Easy Company because of the fact that their previous commanding officer, Thomas Meehan, was killed on D-Day. He was the company commander of Easy Company 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne, and his plane was hit on D-Day. And the plane went down with the entire crew plus 17 other members of Easy Company. So you had and a crew of 5 people. So over here we have some artifacts that were found at that crash site in Normandy. You know, one of the really interesting things about the site is I visited the site several times. When you go there, you know, they still farm those fields, and I have a photograph back there that was taken when the crops were coming up, and right before the hedgerow you can see a half circle where the plane burned, and the crops still will not grow in that site.
They still don't grow
they
even
still
to
don't
this
grow.
day?
I mean, they grow a little bit, but not, you know, you can see it comes up just a little bit, but doesn't fully mature. And that's because of the chemicals, I guess, in the ground left over from that horrific crash on June 6, 1944. Wow. You know, and one of the other really heartbreaking aspects of this story is Lieutenant Thomas Meehan had written a little letter, a small letter, to his wife right before he got on that airplane.
Dearest Anne, in a few hours I'm going to take the best company of men in the world into France. We'll give the bastards hell. Strangely, I'm not particularly scared, but in my heart is a terrific longing to hold you in my arms. I love you, sweetheart. Forever, your Tom.
Absolutely incredible, and what such a reminder of the sacrifice during the Normandy invasion.
Yep. And as I said, we have some of the artifacts. There's a few other artifacts in the Utah Beach Museum, and there's a few more in the D-Day Experience Museum in Normandy, France, including the D-Day Experience Museum has Thomas Meehan's dog tags.
Wow.
That were found at the site, yeah.
The American paratrooper was outfitted with some of the finest and most sophisticated equipment the nation had to offer. Some of it was designed to save the paratrooper from hazards on the ground and in combat.
Wow. What is this, Eric?
So one of the really specialized pieces of American airborne equipment was the uniform. This is the Model 42 jump jacket and trousers. And they were much different than typical infantry uniforms, and they had extra pockets or extra bulging pockets so they can carry their equipment. You know, airborne soldiers had to fight on their own. They had to carry much more ammunition and supplies than a normal soldier because they're dropped behind enemy lines, so they don't know when they're going to get resupplied. So they had these special uniforms made, and one of the problems with the 41 jacket or the 42 jacket, it had some flaws with being weak in certain places, like in the pockets and the elbows, and this is due to them using them in Italy. You know, the 82nd Airborne fought in Italy before D-Day, and so they had some experience. And what it tended to happen was, you know, the knees would go out, the elbows would go out because they're fighting for long periods of time, and you know the material was kind of thin. So what they ended up doing was reinforcing part of this uniform. So you see it in the knees there.
Right.
They had the riggers, who were the guys that repaired the parachutes in airborne units. they took tent material, World War II tent material, and they put extra material on the knees, the elbows, and along the pockets so the pockets wouldn't rip out. You know, the stitches were a little thin, and, you know, they would put hand grenades in there and clips of ammunition and stuff like that that was really heavy and really bulky. And in Italy, they had a big problem with them carrying. And so the reinforced uniform is, you know, pretty much only used on D-Day, and they've become extremely rare because just not many of them survive. Another interesting piece of airborne equipment was the switchblade knife, and this was kept in a pocket right here. It had a zipper, and it could be accessed, and the reason they wanted a switchblade knife was in case the paratrooper would get stuck in a tree or something like that, they could reach in here, they could grab the riser of their parachute or the ropes from the parachute, pull this thing out, hit one button, and you have a razor sharp knife, and you would cut those ropes and be able to let yourself down. It's a very specialized piece that mostly only airborne soldiers carried, and they were issued to them. And the unique pocket that they had designed right there so they could grab it, you know. There's a zipper on both sides, actually. And I mentioned being stuck in a tree.
Right.
The paratroopers also carried what's called a letdown rope. And this is just a big section of rope. The ends have these little fasteners on it. And everybody had them. They clipped them on their uniform somewhere or on their equipment somewhere, and it was used for that very reason. If you're stuck in a tree or a hedgerow or something like that, and you're too high to jump down, they could put this around a branch and be able to let themselves down, and it's unique to airborne soldiers.
The uniforms the paratroopers wore were indeed combat ready, but they had minor adjustments. These were only for D-Day and would make a difference for the paratroopers on the ground in the knit and grit of battle.
So the reinforcements on these jackets were only done for the Normandy invasion?
Correct. They were done for the Normandy invasion because by the time the Holland jump happened, they used a different jacket altogether. They gave up the 42s and they went with what was called the M43 jacket, which was a totally different jacket. Now there is, you know, airborne aficionados will definitely correct me on that. There was one unit that used 42 jackets in Holland, and that was the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne. They still wore them because they were held back from Normandy.
And it's a complete set too. Is that something you typically see, having the M42 jacket and the pants as well?
Well, that's a great question because some guys, like I said, did keep their jacket, but rarely did they keep the pants. I mean, think about it in a combat situation, what your pants goes through. I mean, you have them on all the time, you get mud and blood and everything on there. Pants just get destroyed. So in the collector's market, if you're talking about collector's market or rarity, the pants are probably 10 times rarer than the jacket. There's a lot more jackets around that are still reinforced, which are not many, but the pants are rare as can be. I mean, you rarely see it. And to get a match set from the same paratrooper is even more rare. I've seen some collectors put them together, you know. But yeah, having a match set like that is just phenomenally rare.
One side of the plane, one object meant the difference between life and death. One piece of fabric that is the symbol of the paratrooper, the parachute. Erik has a complete set from the Normandy invasion and has brought it out to show me.
Oh, shoot. You're ready for D-Day.
Yep, so this is the T5 parachute I was telling you about earlier, and this is a complete rig. You know, this is the main parachute. You know, this part here is the actual canopy that would deploy, and it would be packed inside here, and this is the full harness. And then this is a reserve parachute, just like I showed you from the 506 one. And of course, this one is marked for the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne. And as the other reserve was marked RS for the commander's initials, Robert Sink, this one is marked GVM, which is for the the commanding officer of the 502nd, which was Colonel George Van Horn Mosley. So every one of the 502nd pieces of equipment will have that GVM for his initials on there, and it's marked up here as well, and it's marked on the reserve parachute too. And this is one of the only complete examples around. And again, this was found at the same place that the 506 one that I previously showed you was found. It was in a farmhouse that was in Saint-Germain-de-Verville in Normandy. There was, I think, 4 of these. There was 1 of these, and there were 2 or 3 of the canopies.
How many pounds of gear would the average paratrooper have on them going into D-Day?
I don't know if there's really an average. It would be depending on what weapon he was carrying. You know, if he was a mortar man, he may be carrying a base plate or also the tube, and he may have shells. You know, I mean, I've read accounts where guys who only weighed 100 pounds or 120 pounds had the exact same amount of equipment on them as their body weight. So you may have 100 pounds of equipment.
The story of the Airborne is not only told through artifacts, it's also told in books. Erik has just finished his very own on who else but the story of Dick Winters himself.
Now this is cool. Hang Tough, the World War II letters of Major Dick Winters. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, you know, when we got the Dick Winters collection, one of the real gems in there it wasn't just his uniform and his pistol and his artifacts. There was also all his wartime and later files from when he and Stephen Ambrose were writing Band of Brothers. So there's files, there's also photo albums, and the real untapped gem was his World War II correspondence. And what Dick Winters did was he not only corresponded with his parents, but he corresponded with the Navy wave all through World War II and even before World War II, because he was in the Army when World War II broke out. In fact, he was on a date with this lady named Dieta when Pearl Harbor happened. And so he corresponded with this lady from December of 1941 up until the time he came home in December of 1945. And he wrote to her often. So myself and my co-author, Jared Frederick, edited the letters, and we put context with it. And we called on one of 3 men who are still alive from Easy Company who served with Major Dick Winters, Brad Freeman, to do the foreword to the book. And this book is available at Amazon, and it'll be available through our website, GettysburgMuseumofHistory.com. But it's just a labor of love. You know, we worked really hard on this book, and it's really something special. And I hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely. And it seems like going through this journey of writing this book, you've seemed to amplify the historical record, which is an amazing thing to do. Just add more information that may have not been known before. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
So Ryan, I have to show you one more thing that's not here. I have a friend that has an original World War II Sherman tank that rolls. I mean, it's a working vehicle, yes, and it's not airborne, but I think it's something that you would really enjoy. And I called him, and he said he would give you a ride. You want to go check out a Sherman?
Yeah, let's go check it out. Absolutely.
Right, let's go.
All right.
Ryan, I want to introduce you to Adam Buck. He's the co-owner of the American World War II Experience, and they happen to have one of the finest vehicle collections in the United States.
Well, very good to meet you, Adam. So tell me what we got here. What do we have? Well, Ryan, what we have here is a 1945 M4A2 E8 Sherman tank.
Wow.
And this tank is a late war tank. This model came out in 1944. It's nicknamed the Easy 8 because of its 76mm gun, improved suspension, and thicker armor. The tank has a 5-man crew with a gunner, a loader, a tank commander, a co-driver and the main driver. It has twin General Motors diesel engines and is a 76mm main gun.
What about the other guns on there, Adam?
The tank also has a 50 caliber machine gun on the top of the turret, and the front of the tank features a 30 caliber Browning air-cooled machine gun in the bow. Also in the mantlet of the gun, where the main gun sits, right next to that is another 30 caliber machine gun, also operated by the gunner who fires the main gun.
Can you tell Ryan a little bit about the project you have going on here?
Of course. So I live here with my family in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. We have a large military vehicle collection, mostly World War II. We have about 75 vehicles right now, and we're working on starting a brand new museum outside of Gettysburg called the World War II American Experience that will feature many World War II vehicles, helmets, artifacts, uniforms, and a lot of displays that'll go with the vehicles to teach people about how the different vehicles served during the war, and what the different branches, different units did during the war. All right, well, would you guys like to take a ride?
Absolutely. It sounds fantastic. Let's do it.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Adam, thank you so much for showing us this wonderful piece of history, being able to experience it with you. And I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors with this upcoming museum of yours. And I cannot wait to see it. Thank you so much today. Erik, thank you for being such a wonderful host to Gettysburg and being able to see the real airborne artifacts at the Gettysburg Museum of History and show what it took to survive D-Day in the Airborne.
You're welcome, Ryan. Glad to do it.
Absolutely.
As I depart Gettysburg, I feel a sense of gratitude of what the men of the Airborne did during the Second World War and how Easy Company would play such a massive role. As I continue to hunt for history, a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. Collecting Airborne from World War II is alive and well as people around the world dedicate their time and lives to remembering these heroes. I've learned much here about this story and the role museums play in protecting their legacy. Before I go, I pay homage to the spot that Abraham Lincoln gave his most famous Gettysburg Address, where he famously declared, "These honored dead shall not have died in vain." Words that speak so true into the present time. I will see you next time on Project History.